India will become a hub of global diplomacy as New Delhi hosts the G20 summit on September 9 and 10. With its presidency, India has shined a spotlight on disaster risk reduction by forming a working group on it for the first time. This is one area where many countries have sought to achieve a lot but have come up empty-handed or with minimum results. The Working Group on Disaster Risk Reduction (DRR) has met thrice in last few months, and its recommendations will now be tabled at the G20 summit. What is the DRR Working Group? The DRR Working Group discusses all aspects related to natural disasters, loss of life and livelihood, impact on countries as well as their economies, and most importantly, mitigation, rescue and rehabilitation efforts. After 3 meetings, the working group set out 5 key priorities: universal coverage of early warning systems, disaster and climate resilient infrastructure, financing frameworks for DRR, disaster recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction, and nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approach for DRR. Why is India's DRR push important? India's initiative to focus on DRR is a first within the economic bloc. Progress on this will pave the way for collective mitigation and also help the global south in more ways than one. India can take credit for making the concept mainstream and has wisely chosen to use G20 to work on this front. Natural disasters are increasing in frequency and intensity, posing a severe challenge to the world. From raging wildfires in America to earthquakes in Turkey, and from heat waves in Europe to severe cyclone in India's neighborhood. The time to work together for mitigation is now, and that is India's message to the G20, which represents 85% of the global GDP, 75% of international trade, and 2/3 of the world's population. India's initiative makes all the more sense now if you look at the World Risk Index, in which 4 out of the top 10 vulnerable countries are part of G20. The combined estimated annual average loss in G20 countries alone is $218 billion, which is equivalent to 9% of their average annual investment in infrastructure. India is a fast developing country, but disasters can push these gains several years back. So it becomes all the more important to take up the challenge head on and make it a priority to reduce vulnerability to disasters. Disasters, especially natural, are unavoidable, but there are ways to minimize their devastating impact. This includes better economic and urban development, climate protection and poverty reduction. What can the world learn from India? India is a country with extensive experience in handling natural disasters. Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat when this Bhuj earthquake happened, which brought him into the thick of disaster management and relief operations. Today, disaster management is seen as a mass movement in India. The most recent example will be flooding in Punjab's low-lying areas, where people rushed to the rescue and voluntarily started working towards relief and rehabilitation. This shows how disaster management is viewed as a social responsibility, which is the sentiment that India wants to take across the world. The global south, which usually has to fend for itself in times of crisis and disasters, will now find the full force of G20 behind it. This is a big win for India as it sets out to integrate the developing and underdeveloped world with the developed bloc.